is about putting everything together. And what I mean by that is, Leah and I were having this conversation about how artists' artwork can often look very similar. There are no real new original ideas. There are new ways that media is affecting artwork, but a lot of these ideas have existed for a long time. So what does it mean to have your own voice and to create work that is your own voice? Um, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. First, I wanted to share this new book. I was telling Leah about it. I got this book. I was interested in it because I'm usually particularly interested in art books that are written by women. And this one was written by Emily Noyes Vanderpool, and it was printed in 1901. That's when the copyright was filed, and it's considered to be the first color theory book, which is incredible to think. That a female artist in the early 1900s happened to have written this book, and the book has been really interesting to read. It's got 100 and I think 20 plates that that they have captured of her ideas and her concepts. And so I've been going through her color work and really been enjoying it very much so. However, one of the things that I wanted to share with people when we talk about how much time abstract artists spend on color is that Emily Vanderpool goes into a very long explanation of the relationship or the similarities of color and sound. And she comes out of this description of these parallels saying that color is the music of light. And I think that that is a very interesting I think it's a very interesting concept when we think about how much color makes a difference in the work that you're doing, because it is like some sounds do not sound well by themselves, but together in a symphony creates kind of this beautiful experience that you couldn't have any other way. And there will be some colors that are like that. Often the browns, I think, are like that, to be really honest with you. So today we're going to be starting from an idea, an expression, or a feeling. We're going to create a color palette from that expression or feeling. We're going to test it out with our Joseph Albers way of testing out color. And then we're going to create an abstract painting from it. And then we're going to finish that painting with mark making. Mark making is the only thing that we haven't really addressed. So I pre-did some examples because you can tell that it looks a little different where I am today. I actually am somewhat on vacation in a vintage trailer park. And so I am teaching from my travel studio, which is very appropriate for me. Most of my work is done plein air. I do a lot of travel painting. This 2-day trip that I'm taking will result in the largest number of paintings I've created maybe this year even. So I want to share that this decrepit little flower here, I'm gonna pull it out. You won't be able to see how awesome it is because it's really been through some heat, like I said. This little flower here is my inspiration for today's color palette. What you can't see is that there's some really beautiful hot pink little ends here. And it is one of the local flowers that is on the peninsula. When I was walking my dog today, I was looking at all the flowers and I got kind of interested in the way that the colors integrate and how, of course, nature always knows what's best, right? So then I took that color and that feeling of that moment. Thank you, Leah. And that feeling of that moment. And I started to try and create a color palette with it, right? And so first I picked all of the colors that I felt like were part of that flower's experience. I brought the flower in here, which I sometimes you're not supposed to do, but it's fine out here. And created this and looked at the gradient and was deciding how I felt about it. And then I took out the shade of purple that was in this one. It felt a little too dark for me, even though it was like very similar to the flower, and tested it with a couple of other colors in this kind of this other splotchy thing, because I like to do it this way, and still this didn't feel right. So then I changed the color of the blue out and settled on these 4 colors, and then went to do my Joseph Albers, because that's how I do it. I have this idea, the moment, the thing that I'm trying to document, I try to distill it into a color palette that makes sense for what I'm thinking about. and then see if it works. And so this was my first Joseph Albers. You can't really tell, but this is a muted green color in the middle. And while this is very beautiful, it wasn't what I was looking for. It didn't feel like the flower, something was amiss. And so I actually tested it with a different color of blue. Made the purple look the way that I wanted the purple to look. The orange looks a lot better. And then this weird muted green looks a lot better. And so now I actually have a color palette that I can start with. I work in very large pieces. So from this point, this is a 12 by 12 square that the Joseph Albers is done on. I then actually move to something considerably larger. And I'll show you some of the sketches that have come from this. This one is just a first layer. We haven't even got to the any kind of marks or any kind of extra pieces there. But it's interesting how it, you know, changes when it's fully saturated out. This is another kind of version. I'm going to flip it upside down because most of the color and awesomeness is at the bottom. Still, though, the addition of the yellow rather than the green doesn't feel like it was quite the right choice. And so you know, this is actually one of my most favorites, and it's lacking the most amount of color, and I brought in yellow. I feel like this one in particular really expresses the moment a lot better. And I think part of that is some of these marks that are made here, right? They're a lot, these details of these tiny little pieces feel like the experience of seeing these tiny little flowers out here at the coast, and they're down on the floor, they're down in the grass, and kind of how life emanates out of them. I haven't moved on to any other layers. Sometimes when I really like a first layer like this one, I'll probably let it sit for a bit because it is somewhat precious, which it doesn't need to be, but it is, you know, very, I don't know, things are going well, so I don't want to mess it up. So we're going to together do a similar process. Okay. And once we get our first couple of layers down and they're what is the word I'm looking for? Drying. I'll do some mark making demonstrations for you guys, because this is where that first exercise comes into play, where I told you to start documenting patterns that you like in the world. Ironically, this table is actually one of my favorite tables. This particular place that I'm staying, I've come to repeatedly during my time as an artist. Gives me a lot of, you know, calm. As Leah and I were talking, you know, I run Portland Open Studios, and then I own a gallery, and I have my own business, and life is a lot sometimes. So it's always good to calm down a little bit. So I'm going to start on a new color palette. Thinking right now about, hold on. Give me a second. I'm gonna, no, not, okay. So right now I'm trying to figure out this way to work the grasses out here. The landscape out here is a very particular kind of landscape. It's these really tall grasses, and they like almost feel golden sometimes in the light. And I always appreciate the way that they reflect with the green. But when we're talking about expressing something like a landscape, which is what I spend a lot of time doing, the shades and the hues that you choose become one of your most important decisions, because green and yellow can be a really terrible color scheme. I know, because I was an Oregon Duck and their colors are green and yellow. And I have seen every terrible color combination of green and yellow ever thought possible. But I also know that using the right colors, they can be really magical. And like I told you before, we know that green and yellow, depending on the hue of the yellow, right, can be kind of the same temperature. So we want to throw in something else, right, that will bring a little pop to it. Thinking about that purple flower today, it seems appropriate to me that in my green and yellow grass painting, that I might also experiment a little bit with some purple in there. So And I'm going to try both a pinky purple and kind of a blue purple. So here is what I've got so far. You can't really tell very well what the colors are, but I'm going to tell them to you. This is yellow ochre. This is a Titan pale green, which is an interesting green that I'm playing with a lot right now. And this is a muted dark green. And this is my favorite, the magic green gold. Okay.
Krista,
I like.
can you take a picture of it and send it across the WhatsApp thread so we can read
I
it?
can't because I don't have your phone with me today.
Right, got it. Okay, never mind. We're good.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the demonstrations and then I'm going to take pictures for everybody and send them that way. That is my plan. You guys will have to have a little bit of patience with me today as we navigate teaching virtually from a vintage trailer. And I guess if it can be done now, it can be done anytime, right? So I'm going to add in a different hue of yellow in case this yellow ochre doesn't really work for me. And I know that Indian yellow looks really good with green gold. It's like they were soulmates in another world. And then, like I said, I'm going to bring in some purple. I'm going to bring in quinacridone violet, which is my favorite shade of a purpley pink. Okay. So now in looking at this in theory, it looks like a great color palette, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to see the hues because it's just life, but it looks like a great palette. However, you know, it's time to put some of that paint down and to see how they're going to interact with each other. And this is when I go to this sketchbook that I have here, which is long and kind of skinny. You can do it one of two ways. You can also just test out the colors on top of the page here that you're going to do your Joseph Albers square on, because you need to look at it in a larger format. As abstract artists, we're kind of always stepping back. That is our job, is to work, step as far back as you possibly can, and then come back to it, and you will find a whole new relationship. So you can put your color up here at the top if you would like. I tend to like to collect it in this little book just because that's who I am. How many different sketchbooks can I possibly work with? We're going to find out. So I usually put just a little dollop of each to see, like, is there anything kind of too wrong right off the bat, you know? I already know that the yellow ochre is a beautiful color, but the Indian yellow is a little bit more light into it. And the grass, the ways that the grasses look out here, they look like they're radiating sunlight from within the grass, which is, you know, kind of the feeling we're coming from in this abstract painting. Okay. Then I got my different shades of green. This one, when water is added, looks like it's really nice. I was kind of worried it would be too dark, but I kind of like the darkness of it. And then, of course, here's my baby. Okay. And then for that pop or that surprise, we have chosen quinacridone violet. Okay, it's looking pretty good. So how does this play out in the Joseph Albers square? But generally what I do personally is I'm going to use a paintbrush. I'm going to try and use a paintbrush, different paintbrush for each of the paints so that I don't have to clean it too much. That's just a personal preference. I have my little paper towels close. So the color that I think I'm going to do the most with, I usually make the biggest square. I'm going to choose the green gold just because it really feels appropriate for me. And I'm going to create the outside square. So what does this have to do with what you guys are going to do? I want you guys to consider how a moment from today or yesterday or this week can be translated in a similar fashion. This large square is kind of our last editing process before we get into the more intuitive parts of abstract painting. It's the time that we get to see, well, how is this going to look in a larger format than just a little color palette? What is going to be brought out, you know? So I chose this dark green because I really like the way the dark green looks. I think it's going to be nice with the green gold. It's kind of stark and dark, and I don't know how much of that I want in my painting. We're going to see, I guess, when I get painting. And then the yellow, and I think I've decided on the Indian yellow, although honestly, I use yellow ochre sometimes on top of Indian yellow to create kind of a second layer, because Indian yellow can be really thin. And then the middle square for me in this painting is going to be the purple square. Oops, that sucks. Just ran my green into my yellow. Garbage. You try not to do that. It happens sometimes. It's not the end of the world. And then our internal square is going to be this lovely purple. At this point, if your color scheme is not going well for what you're doing, you'll know. You'll see it together and you'll be like, I don't feel captivated. I think there are a couple of things that I am going to keep in mind when I'm doing my painting. I know that I don't want to overuse the dark green and looking at this. I know not to mix my yellow with my green because I am a grown-up artist. And I know that I really like the way that the purple interacts with it all. So I'm gonna, this is a color scheme I can work with. So I usually put it behind me so I can look at it with my square. And then I have this next to me that lets me know kind of what the shade of each of the colors are. So I start personally, like I said, with the one that I think that I'm going to use the most of, which this time is the green gold, and clean my brush. I like to add a little bit of water to my paper first. This is a personal thing. How much of each, that you use is definitely up to you. But I like my first layers to be somewhat translucent. I like to build my translucency. And so I will often spritz my paper just to make it a little bit wet. Not as wet as you would with watercolor, but spritz in advance. And then start laying down some of the color. Okay. So, I'm thinking about this kind of field. They have this field that it borders the beach. And I was like, oh no, did I lose my favorite tool? So, and then I tend to like to scrape. So I apply the paint with my paintbrush often, or from the tube, depending on how thin I want it to be. And then I scrape it out. Some things that I'm thinking about when I'm doing this particular painting is the way that the grass moves in the air, and it kind of creates this texture that I think is really interesting. And I think I can probably, did I put it back? Why would it go? Kind of create that a couple of different ways. I can scrape this paint as thin as possible, really kind of scrape it out and work it until I can kind of get to where there's almost no paint, and then it kind of comes out. Or I think what I'm going to do in this instance, this is the funniest thing about working on this table, you guys can't really see, is that you can, creates X's because of the texture and the table and the way that I scrape, which, it's a love-hate relationship with it. So I'm going to take my acrylic and fairly water it down. Okay. Add a little bit more water like this, so it's kind of soupy. And then I use the handle of one, right, in my brush to create little kind of splatters. We won't keep all of the splatters, honestly, but the few that we will keep will come out really nicely in this like idea of kind of movement that I'm looking for. Okay, and then I'm going to come in with the yellow. Since it's extremely warm in here, and my layers are going to dry a lot faster than they normally would, but also this yellow can be put on top of the green gold without creating too much chaos in the world. I'm going to work towards the yellow. you know, and what I'm thinking about here, what I'm trying to create here is like, the yellow is part of what makes the green grass kind of look lit. It's what makes it look like it's glowing, which is what makes it really quite so magical. So I'm gonna apply some, and then I'm gonna do the same thing again, where I use my scraper to change the texture and the actual brush stroke. And I'm gonna move through, okay.
So guys, I want to point out here that when you hear me talk about mark making, right? What is your mark doing? How is your mark conveying what you want to convey? This is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Change, you know, you use one brush, you have the same kind of mark, right? So tools that can, so the mark, we see these marks, the viewer sees these marks, they want to know. Thanks, Chrissy, you're just reinforcing everything I've been saying in abstract terms.
Mm-hmm.
So change.
And your voice is that mark. You can make a painting that looks exactly like somebody else's painting, and the way that your brush is attaching paint to the canvas is what defines the work as your own. So it's very important that you consider how you apply your paint. And don't get me wrong, I have other brushes. I have this brush because I know the kind of brush marks that it makes look completely different than this one. And actually the brush that I'm going to use for this painting is one of my favorite ones, which is that the brush maker has actually cut out layers of the brush, and so that the bristles are separated, right? Because we want to add the purple in, but remember the purple is really only little tiny flowers lying in the meadow. It's not a big part of how light is going to come through. This is only our first layers. So our first layers can be kind of big and grand and gestural. So going to, let me test this first. Yeah, okay. The hardest part to learn with abstract work is learning how you want your marks to be, the paint to be loaded to continuously make them, right? Because I like my marks to be somewhat consistent. So now I'm bringing in kind of this quinacridone magenta here that reminds me of those little flowers that I was working with earlier today. And it gives my painting a little bit of structure. At this point, I'm going to let it dry completely because the next couple of layers I need to not be inhibited by the water on it, which is why I always tell you guys you want to work on multiple paintings at once. Also, a great idea is to work on multiple paintings with the same color scheme. So choose your color scheme. Have your moment that you're deciding this is based off of, whether or not it's how hot Portland is and you want to do bright red and bright orange everything, or it's the grasses out on the peninsula. I'm going to let this one dry and I'm going to move on to a second piece of paper. So you guys today, we're going to do this several times today because I want you to work on challenging yourself to try color schemes that you didn't try the first time. So this first time, work with a color scheme that you're comfortable with, something that you like and you think is beautiful. Go through the process of making your color palette, creating your Albers square to see if the color scheme you're choosing works out well. And then we're going to work into our first abstract paintings. When that painting dries, I will show you guys what the second layer and third layer looks like for me. How does that sound, everybody?
That sounds good. You want them to start now?
I do, and I'm going to continue working with my same color palette, working on secondary paintings. So if you guys have any questions, we'll be here, and as soon as that one is dry, I will do some more demonstrations. If you guys want to share your color palettes as you develop them in the WhatsApp thread, we will pay attention there for it. Feel free to ask questions. I'm going to give you guys, 5 or 10 minutes because this deciding on your color palette can feel like an overwhelming choice.
How many colors do you think we should pick for our palette?
I kind of make it really simple on myself. I like to choose, I like to start with 2 colors that I feel like are super representative of the moment I'm trying to share. So I started with that green gold and the yellow. And then I like to add a couple of shades of them because what I'm going to do in my second and third layers, I'm going to come in with more opaque paints that are like lighter colors to kind of create some depth. And then I like to have one color that pops, that is like the apple of our eye. We're not going to use it a ton. Like we're going to do like I did with those lines where it's just those lines. That'll probably be the only purple we use, but that people's eyes are visually drawn to. So start with the two, choose your pop color, and then have a couple of secondary shades to help yourself out.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
White is not a color?
What is not a color?
Is white a color?
White is a neutral. However, what I want to say about white is that it's often one of my most impactful colors. It's how you use it. My suggestions about white are this. Don't use white as one of your first layers. Use it as a second or third layer on top of a good swatch of color so that it's really visible.
Okay, thanks.
Nina, that was a great question about white. Excellent, excellent question.
You can also, when you're just beginning with color palettes, I use Pinterest a lot just because, again, there's no new ideas. And I like how people choose to be challenging with color palettes. So you can always try that. Neutrals are usually, they're not going to always be the white, black, and then some tans. They're not always going to be one of your primary colors, but they should always be considered part of your palette.
Okay, and we're using acrylic?
I'm using acrylic. You can use acrylic or watercolor. I actually do this in both paints. I just happen to have brought acrylic today.
Okay.
I can see Jean head down already diving in.
Now, how many colors do we pick? 3 and then a pop?
2 and a pop.
Two
But
and a pop.
yeah, what you want to keep in mind is like you're going to do 2 colors from one like temperature family and a pop color, but you're also going to consider that you'll probably have secondary shades of some of those colors. So if you add white to one of your primary colors to make it lighter, that counts as a second shade.
Okay.
I'm going to go into the WhatsApp app, so I have to move my phone. Don't look at the camera if you don't want to feel sick. Cool, perfect. Now I can add some color, some photos for you guys. Oh man. Oh man. Toshmin's traveling today, but she did some composition exercises this morning. Excellent. Oy vey.
I like them both, but Krista, I really love this first one with the grays. Oh, yum, yum.
That's graphite. And we'll talk about the difference in how what makes things more successful or not successful.
Jean just sent you a
Weird.
hours thing.
Okay, let's talk about second layers now. Mine's drying a little faster than yours. That's fine. It's really warm in the trailer I'm in all of a sudden. Probably some teaching. So as Leah pointed out, I've got several first layers going, and I wanted to use the first layers as an opportunity to talk about some of the different ways you can approach abstract art. This way is one of the ways that I approach abstract art that uses a lot of negative space. And I really like to think about leaving some white paper in there to let people have room to breathe. So you have to be a little more intentional with your marks. You have to really think about what you're trying to express and how that's going to come across. The one that Leah likes is a lot more intuitive. It's smaller marks, I started with the water soluble graphite, which is what the dark stuff is. And then I worked upwards from the water soluble graphite. I did some of the dark greens, and I did some of the light green, some of the yellow, and then some of the purple. These two pieces will be worked differently as we finish this. And then the last one that I'm working on has the first layer of just the two different colors of green. It's really dark. And we're going to work this one even more differently than we work the other ones. So we're going to kind of go through each of them so that you can see how your second and third layers might look. When I'm thinking about what the different layers are supposed to look like, or how to best help myself, what I like to think about is our first layers are our biggest strokes. Our second layers kind of come in. So there's a couple of big strokes, but primarily smaller strokes. And then kind of our third layer is our smallest stroke. That's where the little dots come in, little tiny lines once you've decided how people are paying attention or not. So on our second layer, I'm going to be looking at this and being like, okay, so do I need any other larger strokes? I often also will be like, is this pop color making enough of an impact for me? If I need to, I have a fluorescent tube of almost every color I have. If the pop color is not totally working, I'm not afraid to go fluorescent. On this one, I'm thinking to myself, I probably would like a thin layer, a little more yellow, but like a thinner yellow, something that's more translucent and like larger. So going to take this big brush, add water to my already tie flow, so it's super thin. Kind of with this big brush, I'm going to come in and kind of expand some of my marks a little bit. And, you know, I like my second layer, especially if I'm expanding, to be kind of more transparent than the first layer. So it looks like kind of a halo is what somebody once told me. I think that's kind of an interesting concept. You know, it's really kind of light marks that serve to accentuate the marks that are already there. Gives the painting a lot more visual interest and texture. And I like to do it, I like to do it super light on the, you know, more water, less paint, and then a larger brush, just because it's kind of a wash really. But I don't want to lose the marks that I already have that I really like. I also feel like when I look at this, I like the way that the yellow is, or the purple is playing. It's playing nicely, but I don't feel like my mind is excited too much by what it's doing. I'm going to try to add a little bit more of a purer pigment to see if maybe I just needed to. Yeah. Oh, just to see if I need it to be darker. And see if that is going to satiate. I don't think that's going to satiate. What I think I want when I'm looking at this piece is I think I'm wanting some tension. So that's probably going to be some kind of, and at this point, I would be thinking to myself, well, am I going to use gold leaf to create that tension? Because I do use little tiny splots of gold leaf often. I'm not going to use gold leaf because A, I didn't bring it, and B, I don't think that's the kind of tension that I'm looking for. But you know what I'm going to try, and it may be a disaster or it may be awesome, which is about 90% of my painting process. I have what I call road line yellow. So it's a really dark yellow. It's like the stuff that they do, the lines in the highway. And we're gonna just create a tiny little spot of this out here and see if getting it super close to the purple, but not entirely touching the purple. And almost, you can't see this, but the line of the mark almost touches the purple. If that gives it a little bit of zazzle that I'm looking for. A lot of times when I'm working in this format where I'm leaving lots of air or leaving lots of negative space, I try to make sure that some of my marks come off the page though. There's something about the page seeming like the experience that you're having with the artwork can extend beyond the page. So I'm actually going to do that with my yellow here. Gonna see if I can get the mark to come straight off. So then it comes real close. Looks like it comes out of nowhere, and then it comes really close to that purple. And I actually really think that that makes me feel a little bit better about the purple. Like the purple feels like it has more of a thought process.
So
Now,
watch this for a little bit. I want you guys to watch this for a little bit. I know you've both emailed color palettes. Krista will look at those.
I'm going to look at those as soon as we do this.
I want to hear your thought about like what you were, but watch her for now because I think this is.
I will definitely look at them as soon as we finish this one. So often I'll be thinking to myself at this point, when is it done? That's the biggest question I get from my students. How do I know when it's done? Well, how do you know when it's done is when you feel like what you're trying to document is being documented. I do feel like when I look at this, I do think of the grasses that are up on the beach. However, I do think that some interest might be valuable, right? So that is where our crayons and the graphite comes in handy. Here are the Neo color crayons that I have. I like to get a color that, you know, it's complementary, but maybe not part of the game, because then you really feel like, what is it doing? So I'm going to take this pink. I'm going to create some more tension. It's going to come from here. Okay. And it's going to go off. So I generally like to just have a line that interacts with the rest of it. The nice part about this type of crayon is if you want it to look more like paint, you can take a paintbrush and water, and it's water soluble, you know, so then it becomes kind of like a little paint mark. Okay. And then usually at this point, we get down to our marks that are even smaller. This is when I would be considering the gold leaf, which is not going to be on this one. Or what I would be considering is some graphite marks. You know, I'm thinking I have my regular graphite pencils here in a little pouch. Ooh, goodbye. Oh, they got soaked. That's terrible. So I'm going to take my woodless graphite. I'm just going to make a couple of marks to bring a little bit more energy and engagement to the piece. What I've discovered over time in doing a lot of abstract art is that like different types of marks seem to mean something to me. I have these 3 circular marks that always represent me and my siblings. So if I'm doing personal work, I tend to have those in my personal work. And you know, you get relationships with different types of marks. This is the reason I was saying, like, pay attention to the textures around you. You're going to find textures that you really like to have in your pieces that you feel like add to it and give some visual depth to it. What I'm thinking about with my marks is, where are people's eyes going to get caught, and how can I bring them to some of the areas that are really beautiful but subtle, and so they might not read the inside, right? We know that when we're taught to read the first couple of letters and the last couple of letters, and we're not taught to read the middle parts. I like to bring my dots to my middle parts so that they can create more interest in the painting. And I think at this point, I'm going to let it fully dry, because once it's fully dry, it'll look just a little bit different. But this is going to kind of be its resting point as of right now. Like I said, with all the negative space, I like to leave it and let it have a little bit more air. With a piece like this, I haven't decided entirely yet if I'm going to fill the whole page with smaller marks. So we've done our big marks, right? Our big marks. And now am I just going to keep going smaller and smaller and smaller? Or am I going to come in with some visual like components to help drive the eye through this. I love the way this is floating on here. I do think that it needs some additional marks that are smaller. One of the things that I like to do is use the graphite because it will re-wet and kind of expand its marks a little bit. It also creates the opportunity if you want to do some sprinkling, but I'm going to expand these marks a little bit, give it a second shade of the same color, you know, by adding water. What's nice about this graphite on this particular piece is that the greens are kind of mixed in with it. So it's got kind of a green haze that's really nice. It's a different expression of kind of a similar color palette and a similar concept. We're just going to go a little bigger with it. It's going to fill a little bit more of the page, but we're doing it using water because then it's not overtaking, it's not adding a bunch of darkness, which, you know, the painting is already super dark. We don't want to overdo the darkness. It's just giving us a little translucent kind of exterior, which is really nice. That was really nice, actually. That makes me really happy to see that. I think I'm going to leave this white on the inside because it really draws the eye there. Like, it's so stark, but I'm still going to expand some of this outside here. Get some of it, some pigment on the outside. What it's doing is it's grabbing the green pigment and doing a really light green haze. You know, which comes down to that concept of the way that I was talking about how the grass seems almost like it's glowing. Well, this is a very similar kind of thought process. It's a different kind of second layer, right? And it's because our first layer is so dark that your natural second layer is about bringing light in, not just adding more darkness. It can also be hard for people who don't necessarily like darkness to have a painting that's so dark. I struggled with it for a long time and would do a lot of different things to lighten it up. And at this point, I've kind of realized that I actually really like some of the darkness. It's always kind of like the other side of the version. I'm going to let this dry because it really has to dry. And I'm going to take a look at your WhatsApp questions and take a look at those real quick. I'm going to remove my spotlight so you guys don't have to look at it.
I'd love to hear what they were thinking as they created each of these color palettes. I would like to, Jean, I don't know what moment in your day you were trying to capture. Can you tell us?
Yeah, I was looking, I have a spider plant that came from cuttings from my mom's spider plant. And I now have like 3 huge ones that have all grown from a couple of little babies I took off my mom's plant, which I love because it's part of my mom. And I love the dark green and the light green, and it's in a terracotta pot, so that grounds it.
Nice.
I love it. It's really funny how plants can be super emotional for us. We actually, my partner just lost a cutting to a weird bug that was from her grandmother's plant, and her grandmother's dead, and there is no re-getting that plant, you know?
Yeah.
And she was heartbroken.
Mm-hmm.
It was super emotional. I like your color palette a lot. I painted my first house red and green because I don't know why that was like a thing that I was super attracted to, but what I want to say about it is just be conscious when you're using the red. It's a super abrupt color for people. I think it's really beautiful, but I'm a super bright human being. So I would be gentle with it at first, just so that you don't overdo it for yourself. You can always add more. You can always do that thing where I'm talking about adding water and kind of creating a halo and expanding it. But be conscious of how you're going to react to the red on your green.
Yeah.
I
didn't want it to be too Christmassy.
It's not Christmassy. That's the nice part. The color that you've chosen for the middle totally takes Christmas out of the picture, right? Your pop is a really nice choice. And that's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, which is it's drawing in the eye there. Also pay attention to the fact how nice it looks next to the red. So I would consider when you're placing how you're going to make your painting pop, consider it next to your red. I love the second color scheme so much. I love the darkness of the fourth color. I'm excited to see how you're going to use this one. I'm going to say the same thing about that fourth color that I said about the red color, which
Talking
is,
about Nina's now.
yeah, I'm talking about Nina's now. Just be careful about overdoing it, because you don't want to put yourself in a position from the very beginning that you can't undo. So use that fourth color, which is the largest square, sparingly. And probably I would dilute it a little bit and then develop on top of it. But they're both really good color schemes.
They are. Nina, what were you recreating?
Oh, I have lots. I was having a good day, and then it's not that I'm not a pet person, but I just asked a friend to look after her dog for 5 weeks, and all I thought was, I'm not picking up pet poop.
Oh my God.
That so you weren't looking at anything, you were just thinking about how you felt. That's how you picked those colors.
That is,
Yeah, yeah, just in my head. I like pets, but I just don't want to do that right now. Anyways, I just got a lot going on in my head. And then I have my ex calling me during my class also. So sorry about that with the phone ringing. So it's a busy day.
That's a very Nina thing.
What?
Having this whole world in your head that you're not even looking at what's going on outside. You're like, it's just what's going on in my head.
This is what's going on inside and outside. Yeah, it's very dark though, I find, but it's just
but I think
yeah.
it's appropriate, honestly. What I was going to say about that is that I think that it's interesting that what you're thinking about is how you like pets, but you don't want to take on the responsibility of picking up their poop. And it reminds me of this podcast that I was listening to today that I was telling Leah about before we started, about this podcast that Glennon Doyle put out. Sorry, my dog is dreaming and making very loud noises.
It's human.
It's adorable. And Glennon Doyle talks about sometimes the feeling of wanting to help somebody, feeling responsible to help them, but not necessarily being able to take on the task. And that can be a very dark feeling. So I think it's appropriate. I think it's a beautiful color palette though. And I would just be aware of difficulties you might have in the beginning.
Excellent.
Okay.
It's fucking exciting. This is what I've been waiting for, to hear the stories and then see you guys start to put it together. This is exciting.
Are you doing one too, Leah?
You know, I will at some point. I will. I'm working on a commission that needs to be done in 2 days, so it's not very interesting. It's just a little guy and their dogs, 3 guys and their dog.
I actually think it's a really cute one from the photos that I've seen from it so far.
Really cute. It's definitely cute.
It's cute. It's a cute moment.
It's a cute moment, right? That's what we're trying. So you guys are trying to capture the interior or the abstractness of a moment or something that you notice or a feeling you observe. And I am just working on this external one, but I'm listening. I'll do it eventually.
You know what, Leah actually did the color. You said you did the Joseph Albers exercise with one of your paintings, and it changed how you made choices.
All the time. I am absolutely. It helps me sit down and see, oh, those colors are either going to be variations of the same. Ooh, that's looking pretty. See, I like dark. So your darks are some of my favorites, actually.
I really like them too. But it's also like it is a battle that I have right now. Because I can push them too far.
Right.
I'm working on it. That's why, like, I started with my comfort level, which this is my comfort level, right?
Right.
You can't see for some reason. I'm not sure what is going on with my phone. Hello. Huh. We're frozen.
Often you can just turn your
now it's good. Okay, now we're good. Okay. I was like, it's not showing you guys what I'm trying to show you, which is hilarious. But this is my comfort zone, right? Because it's light and it's airy. But I'm working on the darks, and how I can build out from there. So you might see more darks.
I hope so. I like them.
So if you guys, I just want to put forth, if you don't feel comfortable sharing layers and secondary, you know, the other parts of your painting, you don't have to. However, I really do appreciate seeing them. Just let me know and I will switch into the WhatsApp and take a look at them. Sorry that I don't have my third phone with me today. I'm on vacation.
On vacation.
Well, that's fine. Oh, that looks good.
Yeah,
So
like-
we should do the same thing that you're doing. Like we should just create our own abstract now.
Create your own abstracts now. Just like I said, just be conscious of your first layer with the dark ones. I would use a lot of water the first couple of layers so that your translucent layers can build and so that you can stop it if it gets too dark.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying when I say that?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Yep, now we get to play with it.
I think it's really important to listen to the language, listen carefully to the language that Krista's using. It's very hard to describe what you're doing, particularly abstract art, but she's using a lot of terms that are really helpful. One, a term is transparency. What does that mean? That means that you can kind of, it can be a little bit darker or lighter, but then you can see through those layers. So there's less pigment and more water.
That's actually like the defining feature between watercolor, gouache, and acrylic is
Right.
transparency and your ability to manipulate transparency. So,
Transparency, right.
and gouache, it's harder to manipulate the transparency because it really is a super opaque paint. But it can be really useful in that way, you know, it can be a great stop layer.
And just to be clear, opaque in this case means you can't see through it. So it's the
Can't
opposite,
see through it.
right? So there are two tendencies, there are two sort of things that are vying in any painting, whether it's realistic or abstract. There's transparency, right? Where you can see kind of through the layers of color. And then there is opaqueness. That means you cannot see through the layers of color. It's thicker. It often has, my experience often has a lot of white in it, or some, you know, it's
got,
white. So you can't.
or it'll be a matte. If it's super opaque, it's generally matte. You can expect that when you use it, it's going to be flat looking, whereas paint that is more transparent has more translucency, like golden high flow acrylic will be shiny almost.
So Jean just sent across her first pass. If you want to take a look at it. Do you want her to take a look at it, Jean, or are you just sending it for record?
You can't stop me, I'm already doing it. That's the best part.
Oh wow,
That's a great first layer.
that's nice.
That's nice because you have a lot of marks to work with. And I think that's a really like good starting point. I would let it completely dry before you come back to it. Great use on that red color. It came out really nicely. I like it.
Well, yeah, thank you for the warning because I would have gone heavier. So
You know, I've made a lot of ugly art, which I'm going to also remind you, ugly art does not mean bad art. It's ugly is part of the process. You know, one of the nice parts about learning to do abstract art is if you use paper, it can be fairly affordable to really do a lot of screwy work. I know that I prepped 15 large pages and I think 25 little squares for the 45 hours that I'm here. And I will probably throw away half of them, or I won't throw it away. I have a collage bin that I put it in and keep the pieces. So.
But I think it's important to think about, you guys, this idea that less is more, in a way, less is more, right? Like, I think as a little kid, you want to just throw everything on.
Yeah.
The piling on, pile, 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 pile. And so as we become more measured, we're recognizing that it's good to have areas of rest, right? Sort of not
Yep.
so prominent areas. We're also learning that like sometimes your first stroke is your best stroke. So what can you do to make sure you don't lose it? Right? Like sometimes your first stroke is your worst
Oh,
stroke.
yeah.
It's the best.
Yep. Yep.
I'm just fascinated, Chris.
I'm gonna say this about art. I, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
For some
here.
reason, I couldn't hear you, and I knew you were talking to me, or at least I felt like you were, but I couldn't hear you.
I was just saying, I'm fascinated by how much this all relates to the work I have them do.
You know,
In realism. It's very rooted in like realism, even.
it absolutely realism came first, right? You know, abstract art is fairly young, it's only 150 years old. It's also really interesting when you consider, you know, some of the ways that it was born. Jackson Pollock and Lee Krasner's work are some of the first real abstract painters. And we're going to look at their work one of these weeks. One of the weeks, we're going to look at them together. And really, they were trying so hard to break out of realism. It was like fill the paper with as many marks as possible. But what has happened since then is that abstract art has continued to develop, and there are things that realism, ideas in realism that speak to abstract art.
A lot.
Yeah, we're probably gonna start with Heather Day's work, and we're gonna start with her work next week, and we're really gonna look at what good negative space means versus, say, Pollock or Krasner, who just filled the page with stroke marks.
Nina just sent over a first draft. Pretty neat.
First layer. I
Layer.
love
Not that.
Okay.
it. Sorry, everybody, for the craziness.
I see poop.
Yeah.
Right, not in a bad way. It's totally.
I love it. What I see is struggle, which I think is what you're probably trying to convey.
Yeah.
I love it. I think that, you know, we talked about the white.
Mhm.
With these dark layers, a white on top of it, a wash, is going to be a great option for you. Don't be afraid to try it. What do you got
Okay.
to lose, right?
Yeah.
Remember that, you know, white can always help edit. I love it. I think it's a good start. You both have great starts. You didn't overdo your first layer and make it completely into trash right off the bat. Good job. Because that can be harder than harder than we know. This one is very interesting, as you guys can see. It's
Looks
drawing.
nice. Yeah, it looks really nice. The colors look really transparent. Have you waited for the layers to dry?
So the first layer was that really super dark green, and I waited for it to dry before I put a second layer of yellow, just because the yellow was such a different hue. But the third layers I brought in a new color, which was a muted turquoise, and I didn't wait for it to dry, mainly because the first two layers had already dried. But it's looking really nice, and this is what I talk about when I'm talking about, you know, that 3D effect. Excuse me, sorry. That 3D effect, and more translucent layers. I wanted to show you how you can kind of work out of a dark hole, so to say. And we're going to continue. We're going to continue working it. It's going to continue climbing out of it. But you can see how my marks and my layers, the first couple were super large, and then we've just gotten smaller and smaller. We've overlapped so that we have some lines. So fairly successful so far.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice not to be working in pinks, which is the project that I'm doing right now. It's nice to be in blues for this.
Yeah. Looks really good.
Especially considering I'm at the beach, right? That's very much some blues.
So should we pick new colors or stick with the same ones?
Well, you know, you got a couple more layers to go on your first one, but I do want you working on a second color scheme. So now that you've had some experience creating the color scheme and starting painting, I think you'll make different color choices now, right? And working on a second color choice is definitely what I want to spend you know, the second half of our class doing. I swear that my dog wears a watch. And I know when I say that people think that I'm crazy, but she will be sleeping all day and know to wake up at 3 o'clock on the dot every day to go to the bathroom. And she always wakes up 10 minutes before 5 to start whining for her dinner. And I want to know how she does it. Did she just out of a dead sleep? It's amazing to me. She wakes me up at the same time every day too.
You know, so does Mooka. Mooka definitely. And actually, when I think about it, Hermes too. My cats are also, they're creatures of habit.
Yep. Patchouli lets her schedule and she gets really upset if you go outside of her schedule.
Yep. Hermes just a minute ago jumped onto my paint palette and got yellow paint all over himself.
Oh, it's not abnormal for Patchouli to like step or sit in a splotch of paint
Yeah.
and take that all over my studio.
You're right, Nina. Avoid the pets. They're a lot of work.
Yeah, it's just I don't like dogs. I mean, I like dogs as long as I don't have one. I'm happy. I'm not a dog person. Yeah.
I feel like my dog rules my life 90% of the time.
Entirely rules your life, but I can't imagine you without her. So you're
No way. When I was going through my divorce, she was my home. Like she was the thing that carried me through. Absolutely.
Is your pal.
She's
I
also
worry. Yeah. Do you worry with paints around for your dog? Eating them and stuff?
you know, she has been in my studio since I had her. So now we're coming up on 4 or 5 years. She doesn't try to eat the paint. I will tell you, this is a story that I worried about. So she doesn't try to eat the paint or anything like that. I have a home studio as well. My partner has a dog, and my partner's dog has also been raised in a studio, but Audrey's a ceramicist. And I had a palette that I had scraped, and I used glass palettes in my studio. And because you can actually keep the acrylic scrapings, and you can actually attach them to paper or wood panel using like a clear gesso or a Mod Podge. And Snacks actually tried to eat the scraping. Patchouli has never tried to do that. Snacks is a lot more docile and wants to be good. So she will never again come near my palette. I can guarantee you, just from getting in trouble. But that was the first time that we had a situation where there was tension. So I guess I'm just lucky to go that long. Patchouli eats everything else in the world. You can't have food in the studio. We have to have a studio trash for food trash that's in kitchen only. So she's got her own issues.
My cat Mooka, I would say, is very. Oh, Leslie, hey.
Hi, you guys. Sorry, I fell asleep. I'm such a loser.
Jump in and start.
I just thought I'd stop in anyway.
Yeah, a great nap.
Why don't you basically what Karista did?
I'm sorry, stop talking.
Yeah, listen, and I'll tell you what to do. Jump in. She made an Albert. She took a moment from the day. In this case, it was connected to a flower that she found outside, but for you, it could be anything. And she set up a little Albers, color triangle with like maybe 2 colors and 1 pop color. Yep. Remind you about the experience, and now we're just layering. So just colors and just do that. And Leslie, this whole thing is recorded, so you can go back and listen. Don't worry about that. I'll make sure you get the link. But this might be really good because you just woke up, so you're like, whoa.
And
I may just listen.
What I'm doing right now is working through the different types of ways that abstract art can be worked. So I started with this one.
Yeah, his colors are great.
Got lots of negative space. Use some really defining marks to make the composition. I'm working on this one, which I started with a super dark layer to kind of show people how you can come out of almost like a too dark look, like first
Yeah.
layer. So I started with like a dark green that's almost black. And then this one is the same color. Come on, yeah, it's the same color scheme as my first one, but I used smaller marks and a different kind of flow just to kind of work through it. So I've been working through these three, and everybody else has been working through theirs. And then, sorry.
Okay.
And
I
then
have
we're
this, I have this funky background on my Zoom. I'm on my work computer.
it makes me laugh because when I do a Zoom with my mom, that's the one she chooses.
Oh yeah, well, I was born in San Francisco, so I thought it would be appropriate, but it looks kind of weird. It's making my head look weird.
It's an interesting thing. It's like my mom actually works for a government agency that my business has been working with. So our
Yeah.
meetings are actually professional. But I'm always like, Mom, why do you have that dumb background? Like,
I don't want any of my coworkers to see my house. That's why.
Working. I know you want to. Take some colors and start working. Start.
Okay.
Take some colors. I know you want to. You're gonna regret.
I really don't actually.
I say do it when you want
I
to.
have everything set up right behind me too. I brought all my stuff in.
I was telling everybody that I'm in a tiny little vintage trailer in a vintage trailer park
I wondered where you were.
because I like hit the overwhelm from surviving COVID.
Yeah. I don't
And I was
blame
like,
you.
if I don't take time off, it's gonna be rough.
Open studios starting to kick into gear.
It's nice though. I'm excited about Open Studios this year.
Yeah. Me too.
Leah's amping up. She's doing shows constantly, so she's probably a little tired too.
Yeah,
I said to Audrey when I was booking it, I said, should I invite Leah? And Audrey said, you should take a nap.
yeah.
Take a nap.
Yeah, that was a good nap.
Hey, that's what I've been doing. Napping, walking on the beach, and a little bit of painting. Yeah, this is a little crazy. I'm gonna let this one rest. It's got a lot going on. Let's see where I have some opinions. Okay. I'm gonna talk about my favorite top layer. I have heavy bodied iridescent bronze. I love metallic paint or fluorescent paint as a top layer. I like the metallic paints on super dark paintings because they really show up. You have 5 minutes, dog, and then I will feed you. And they really show up. So I've chosen a bronze because I think it'll go really nicely with the color scheme that I've already chosen. And I'm gonna, oh yeah. I'll take a picture for you guys because it's so beautiful.
There we go. I did it.
Yeah, and it's really, oh look, there's your house.
There's my little house. Now I'm gonna unplug this. Is that gonna work?
There we go.
And turn around.
Mm.
Okay.
Oh, Jeannie, I really like your second and third options too. That the last one that's on the right. I love the marks that you have at the bottom. A lot.
It had a completely different emotional content than the first two. I looked at it and went, oh, I like that. That felt very like different.
Okay, I'm at my table. I'm gonna do it now, teachers.
So,
I was gonna start a piece. I got inspired off this photograph I saw, and I did the background.
I love inspiration. Let me see.
Can you guys can't see my camera, can you? Can you see me?
I really I like how it's got the dark marks in it though.
Yeah.
It's a nice good wash.
So I bought some of that gesso and I love it.
Right? It's a game changer.
It is. I don't know why I never knew about that before. You know, I've never painted with acrylics in my life. I mean, I did watercolor like, geez, 9,000 years ago.
Nina's got some
You
interesting
know, I don't.
going on here.
I like the way that her layers are going on top of each other so that you can see them. That I think that's where that 3D aspect really comes from, is making sure that there's enough still available visually.
You see, you've got transparency there. That's what she's
Yep.
talking about. When you can see one, like that blue that goes over the pink and the darker pink.
I've got to feed my dog, so pardon me for a second.
All
That's
right,
okay.
clock, not be late.
I'm trying to hide the dog poop color. I decided
Well, it's working.
it's working good.
Finally learning how to switch back and forth. I feel like such a rock star technology wise. What?
No.
I guess I should mute. Should I mute myself? I make a lot of noise. You know, it takes me a while after I wake up. I'm like the grumpiest person in the world when I wake up. I'm like, what?
Are you like that in the morning, or are you only like that if you take a nap in the afternoon?
Well, I wake up every day at 5 a.m. because I'm fucking an old lady. Excuse my French. I'm sorry, people. But no, I wake up and I'm like,
Because
I hit the alarm 1,000 times before I get out of bed. But
my partner hates the morning, and she cannot take naps. Whereas, like, I'm a morning person,
yeah,
and I love to take naps. I'm like, yeah.
I like naps. I wake up early. I don't like waking up. I prefer to sleep.
I have a dog that gets me up every morning. That's the problem.
Yeah, that makes it so much easier.
She's like, it's 6 a.m. Get out of bed and feed me.
I know, isn't it great?
Yeah, except for it's an alarm you can't turn off.
You guys just have one dog, Krista?
We each have one.
Uh-huh.
So I have a dog, and my partner has a dog, and so like me taking this time away at the beach, I just took my dog and I left.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It affects her dog. She does not like to be away from my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Patchouli's her security guard. She's an anxious dog, and my dog makes her feel really well taken care of.
Yeah.
But I can't manage them both by myself.
My dog had really bad separation anxiety. My poor baby.
Yeah, Snacks had to sleep in a kennel for a really long time because she was too scared to sleep out in the open.
Aw.
When Patchouli came into her life, they started sleeping in beds that were next to each other, and Snacks stopped using the kennel. We actually put it away because she feels really safe with Patchouli, you know?
Yeah.
So it can be hard on her. That's why we try to really keep it minimal if we take Patchouli away from her.
Well,
Schedule of the dog have to be considered, apparently.
I've been applying for a couple dogs, but we lost our dog in February. I think I told that story, but
Oh my gosh, you lost your dog during COVID? That's horrible.
yeah, well, that's why I started taking glass. You probably don't remember. He bit part of my thumb off, so it's a long story. Yeah, so and that's why I don't have much brush control. I was talking about it last week because I lost. See, you can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
it was really tough. We had to surrender our dog. So
yeah, well, and that's a really impossible scenario.
Oh, it was the worst thing. It was worse than my father dying. I know that sounds awful, but you know,
I do know.
One seems more natural in the scheme of life. I mean, my father lived a long life, and I was lucky.
It's hard with dogs too, especially when you have to surrender them. I'm assuming it's because of the bite, because people don't like
Oh yeah, this was not the first time. Well, he took, yeah, it was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
rescue and we couldn't find a place for him, and that's the hard part. And it's just
Like that. We had a dog we had to put down. We just simply couldn't. Some dogs are just too aggressive.
I know.
And
But that's what was weird about Flicker. He wasn't aggressive. He just got triggered. There was something wrong with his brain, He was not aggressive to other people or other dogs ever. Just to us every now and then. He just got triggered by weird shit. And that was the thing, is that he was triggered by just ordinary events. It just escalated,
But Julie gets triggered if we're like walking in a pack and she feels like she has to be a security guard and another dog comes near. If they get too close, we're working on training and she's responding really well to treat training, so she stops barking and stuff like that. But if another dog barks at her or whatever and they're getting kind of riled up, she actually nips at the air and can sometimes grab your leg.
Yeah. They just get scared, and that's, I mean,
She loves the people. She wants the people to be safe. And
yeah. Is your dog a rescue?
she is.
Yeah.
She's a breed that was, but she's a breed that was found wandering in the desert. Because hound dogs will follow their scent.
She's a hound. Our dog was a hound.
Yeah. The hound.
Yeah.
And she was in the rescue that we got it from for like 2 years.
Oh.
But it was because she's really sensitive and they didn't want to give her the wrong family.
Yeah. Ours was a red bone coonhound, and and hounds are like that. I mean, Mike has experience with hounds. Flicker was our first. He was beautiful, but he was stuck to me like glue. It was just the weirdest thing. He loved me,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying a new, so I did this version and I'm going to take a picture because I want to show you guys how the matte paint looks different on top of the more translucent layers. I let my inner 80s child take over on my top layers, and you can see how sometimes adding colors is not always a good thing. And then I am starting a new painting with a similar first layer, but experimenting with different ways to work myself out of it. Starting with a lot of dark colors, which Liquitex has a line of what they call muted colors, which are kind of darker versions of colors that you're used to. So it's a muted violet and a muted green and a muted turquoise. They're really beautiful, but they're very dark. And again, I like to challenge myself if I don't like something, to work through that, so to say. I didn't like purple, so I made myself use it a lot. So I've been working on my aversion to dark paintings. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, that works out pretty good because this thing I'm doing is dark.
It's people like dark because they see depth in it. They feel,
of course I'm laughing because I'm evil.
Oh, you be quiet.
Okay, I'm perking up now, people.
You look at you go. You just got to wake up a little bit.
I know. I was just like, well, it's always good to talk about. No, go ahead. I'm just blathering.
Oh, it's just too bad nobody lives closer. I'd offer them my friend's dog to look after for 5 weeks.
Oh my God, I would totally look after your friend's dog.
Can I say something though? 5 weeks is an extreme amount of time to ask somebody to look after your dog.
Oh yeah.
They're traveling, right? And it's like, I'm not. Yeah. Anyway.
That's a long time for the shelter, though, for a kennel.
It's a long time for anything. That's like a whole new home. 5 weeks is a whole new home.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna say no. I just have to figure out how to say it because she's also going through a divorce and whatever. So.
Where are you at?
I'm in Canada.
Oh, that's right. You're in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have family in Toronto and Newfoundland.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice place. Very beautiful.
Yeah, my mom was born in Howley, Newfoundland.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Newfoundland is beautiful, actually. The people are wonderful.
It is
Well, all
beautiful.
Canadians are wonderful, actually.
Ah,
That's what I always say when people ask me what I am, because if you have dark hair, you're obviously something, right? That's what are you? And I'm like, I don't know, dude, I'm Irish, And I say I'm Canadian American.
Good.
That's why I'm so nice.
That's right. I had a guy ask me that once. Yeah, he was Palestinian. He was a painter, and he goes, "What are you? Are you mixed?" And I said, "I'm half Canadian."
Probably not what he was looking for.
No, many Middle Eastern men want to know that about women. So they are an odd breed. I wouldn't recommend them.
Ooh, get out of here, bug.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Now we're gonna work this.
Mm.
Work it, girl.
There it is.
Little RuPaul for everyone today.
Ooh, lots coming across the thread right now.
I like your start there. I like that you were like, I'm done with the dog poop thing.
Yeah, I don't like it very much. So,
You know, the good thing about paintings that you don't like is, like I was saying, you can do collages by ripping them up. Um,
Oh, yeah.
it gives you different perspective when you rip things up a little bit. I would definitely encourage it. If you don't like it, rip it up and turn it into pieces.
okay, I can paint over it too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is my favorite little moment of my new painting. It's really special.
Ooh, that is nice.
It's nice.
Beautiful.
It's really nice.
Krista, did you use a scraper on that?
Yeah, I have been painting primarily with the scraper today. I do technically have brushes with me.
Yeah.
I don't use them unless I'm painting on canvas primarily.
Yeah.
I don't know about other people, but what I've learned about myself is that I paint completely different on canvas than I do on paper
Mm-hmm.
because the canvas doesn't soak up the paint the same way.
Yeah.
I tend to have to work a lot harder for it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
A lot more layers, a very different style. I'm actually working on 3 really large, oversized canvases right now, and it's reminding me again how different it can be.
I feel like you have to like psych yourself up for each size,
Yeah.
what it is, what it does.
Yeah.
It's a whole,
Well, it's such a different process,
yeah.
You can do a lot more though. I mean, you can sand it and stuff like that, and you can't really sand paper.
Right.
But it's definitely different. Oh, I forgot. I was going to send you guys a picture of that muted. I will do that. Now you guys can see how different that top blue color looks on top of the translucent paper, translucent layers, because it's a matte paint. Paint. Oh, little lady.
Ooh. Like that paint.
Nice paint.
I like the paint.
It's gold. It's Golden's new flat matte.
Ooh.
Comes in tiny little bottles like this.
Oh my
Very
God.
interesting. Yeah. They also have this other flat paint. It's over there. It's got chalk in it, so that's what makes it flat. I don't think that it performs as well as this stuff does, though. And that's the one I got in also that permanent yellow, that super bright yellow. And it's been really fun to play with. Do you use a lot of gel mediums and stuff like that, Leah? Do you use a lot of additives?
I don't. I was just thinking that as you were talking, I was thinking about how like as I think about abstract painting, how much more important it is that you play around with different types of
Sure.
mediums and gels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use Galkid for my oil paintings to do glazing and things like that. But yeah, I rarely. It's just paint and it's just.
I haven't used a lot of this stuff. I actually, the art supply place just gave me a like a selection of everything essentially.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, you know, just go on YouTube, find out how somebody else is using it and use it. And you know, probably in August, I'll get some time to actually experiment with it. But we'll see. I do like to always try the new things that like Golden comes out with. They come out with new colors. They come out with new, like
Yeah.
this was a really fun.
And yeah, I think Golden's amazing. They really,
Yeah.
they come out with a lot of really neat. And I was just thinking about how much I don't like think about that, but I mean, your class is making me think about it.
It's interesting though, what I think about with it is this interesting intersection of abstract art and current cultural trends.
Yeah.
And I think Golden does a good job of reacting to cultural trends by creating new colors and new types of work. And you know.
Interesting, and I think very true statement. You're right. That's what makes them such a great company.
They are the best.
They really are.
This is coming out much nicer, this one. The bright yellow is definitely creating some lightness in it, which is really nice.
I fixed the dog poop one. I painted all over it now.
Yeah, I can't. I'm gonna go and find out what that means. Yeah.
No, I didn't mean that. And
Oh, you know.
actually, look.
Oh, see, I love it.
Looks
And there is a whole world of people that really love abstract artists that scrape in their painting like that.
I love that.
Oh, okay, good.
It's also like when I was talking about how canvas can react very differently than paper, that is a great example. That is with canvas, you can have layers and layers of acrylic that you actually sand down and show the layers underneath. And you can do a lot more of like scraping and stuff like that because the canvas can handle it when the paper can't, right? But I love it. I love the way that the light blue is at the bottom and it's just a like tiny little line of it. I think it's weighted nicely. I think it's very dimensional. So I think you actually saved it. And remember what I told you about hating things before they're good.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. I didn't have time to gesso it, but it would be good to gesso the paper prior to painting on it.
You can definitely force it to do a lot more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually had to pre-prepare everything. So I went through and gessoed a bunch of the square pieces when I did my big pieces last night.
Wow.
And I don't gesso my sketchbooks though. Oh, I do want to show you guys one particular sketchbook that I have. So I don't gesso my sketchbooks. I'm going to take this off Spotlight. Give me a second.
Oh, nice, Jean. What are you using to scrape with? Oh, a little scraper. She's got a scraper. You've got them all scraping, Krista. It's
The
addictive.
scraping is the best way to do it. Of course, I've got them all scraping.
The dollar store had 3 for $1.
See?
Three for $1. I gotta go there.
Got to do it. You got little packs of them because they're for drywalling. So this is one of the sketchbooks. I work in about 4 sketchbooks at a time. Mainly because you guys saw the one that's long, it's for my color palettes, and you saw the square one that I do a lot of the Joseph Albers type of stuff in. And then this is the one that I actually work on some of my more abstract compositions. Something that I did in this particular sketchbook was I actually made it myself so that I could alternate different papers. There's a new mixed media paper out that comes in multiple tones. So right here, you can see that it's a gray and it also comes in a brown. This one is a brown. And then I use like a canvas paper and then I think I just alternated them. This is one of my favorite sketches and it's because it has fabric that has been dyed with rust. So remember how I showed you that I like to paint with coffee sometimes? So rust you can actually turn into a painting material as well. With rust, though, it's a little different because you need to add a little bit of vinegar and a little bit of salt so that it doesn't continue to deteriorate what you're painting with. But this was rusty nails wrapped up in my fabric, rolled up, sprayed with vinegar water, let sit for 24 hours, and then let dry flat. And then I Mod Podged them to my actual abstract paintings. They were part of a larger piece. I kept the larger piece, but I want to keep the little scraps. This is what I do a lot of, like this thing right here. I'm not into it right now. I probably just need to go through and paint over it, but it's just sitting there waiting for me to deal with it. I want to encourage you, if you come across some of these other color pages, it's kind of fun to work with a different color ground. And I have from this particular sketchbook, it's been really fun because it's like this one right here, right? It's super dark because it's this blue tone. This one is a blue tone that I got, and it's very, very different when you talk about working from white or gray or tan to blue. You know, some of these are great. This is watercolor. A little harder to work with, but this one is also watercolor. I just did this one last week, but definitely fun paper to work with. I got very lucky when I was in art school that I got taught to make my own sketchbooks. Not that I do it well, but they hold together. They don't fall apart, and that's what matters, right?
What kind of paper do you use for your sketchbooks that you make?
I use. So that one is that one's a mixed media paper. That is a good question. I like 140 pound or heavier watercolor paper. That particular sketchbook was made because I found this weird paper that I'd never seen before and I wanted to work with it. And it's a mixed media paper that has come out in the United States. I think it's a Strathmore paper. and they've done it in blue, gray, and brown. I wish I had the pack so that I could show you. It's been interesting to work with. It's a very different experience when the paper's not white.
Yeah, it does. I love that actually. That is a great.
I like it when they're next to each other and you're working like on a spread, and one half of the spread is one color and one half spread is a different color, because you really see how different and how visually different that can look because you're working on it at the same time. And then if I buy a pre-made sketchbook, I buy handbook almost exclusively. Just have been a big fan for a long time.
That's a great idea.
Might be fun to have one abstract class later when we are bored of working with artists making a paper.
I don't make
yeah.
paper, but I would love to see somebody who does. I read a book last night on how to make organic pigments and paper.
Really?
Yeah.
I made paper in high school. I
Those
had
are
a really good
interesting.
teacher in I had really good art teachers in high school, so I was really lucky.
I didn't do art in high school.
Really? That's
Yep.
all I did.
I'm like Leah. I came to it super late. I did band. I was a
Right on.
musician. And
What
I
did you
thought,
play?
like clarinet.
Oh, cool.
I did,
Exactly.
but I
What?
didn't have a band. I couldn't march and play at the same time.
Oh, I was drum major and section leader and played all the way through college.
You guys were really good students, weren't you?
I'm in high school.
I am blessed with a very high IQ and therefore got by. Meaning
Yeah.
I was really good at faking it.
Yeah.
Does not mean that I was a good student.
Yeah.
I've been always more active in the extracurricular side. But art was like a life-saving thing for me. You know,
Yeah.
it was as a teenager and a young child, I'd always kind of felt like I didn't really have the verbal capacity to express what I was experiencing in my life. And I felt frustrated by that. And I felt kind of tormented by it. And when I started doing abstract painting, it was the first time that I felt like I could fully express what I was trying to express.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I'd had that in high school. I
Yeah.
probably would have had a better high school experience.
It probably changed your brain chemistry, you know, because
I'm
it can
sure.
do
It
that.
definitely-
Yeah.
Well, yes, my ex-wife was a mental health therapist, and she would talk about
Oh,
how you can create new neuron, like new pathways for your neurons. to travel.
exactly. That's right.
And I'd be like, "Duh,
Leo,
that's what
your
it is."
hair looks beautiful. I wanted to tell you. I love it.
It feels like I'm like, oh my God.
Do you
get it?
feel naked?
It feels great. It just feels
Does
like
it?
been laying on my head just, it was just making me miserable.
It's, yeah, the hell with this heat.
Thank you. 2 years. I went 2 years without it.
I know. It's awesome.
We all did, but I'm like, oh my God, it really was 2 years. My hairdresser was like, long time no see. And I told these guys, he was like, yeah, how much you want off? And I'm like, most of it. And she just said, I'm just getting rid of the bottom half. We're not even going to wash it. Just cut it off.
I love that. Let me just get this off of here.
I love the gutsiness of a good hairdresser. Okay, so this one is complete and it's beautiful. It's really fun. I'm gonna send a picture, but it's got some nice focal points. It really, interestingly, feels a lot closer to what I was trying to express than the last one. That's interesting. Oh, see, I like the black. I'm loving the black, Les. It's beautiful.
Yeah, you know what that is? That is Liquitex heavy bodied muted gray, and then that
line of paint I was talking about.
yeah, and then when you add that white to it, it looks lavender almost, but
Yep, I used to have a thinner version of it. It was my favorite purple for a long time.
Yeah.
I used black.
Wow.
See,
Uh,
I love that what would you call that? Almost a goldenrod with that turquoise.
Yeah, it's that traffic yellow that I was talking about. It's pretty magical. And for your viewing pleasure, you can see what my dog is doing. This is what her vacation has been like. She's got a hard life.
coming along.
You want to show everybody how hard your life is and how you're just a terrible dog who just finds places to sleep all the time? Yeah. Yeah. Are you just a terrible dog that finds places?
Oh, there she is.
Yeah,
Oh, so she's adorable.
she is people comment constantly on how genuinely beautiful she is. Like she is an attractive looking dog.
She's a pretty girl. That is true.
Does
Sorry.
she have some hound in her?
She's pure vet. She's plot hound.
Okay, I now remember we were just talking about that 20 minutes ago.
She's like the coonhound's skinny little sister.
Yeah,
Little
those
thinner,
ears. I know those ears are like velvet.
and the worst bay of all of the hound families.
I love the bay though. I loved Flicker's bay. He was pretty good, for he didn't he didn't talk a lot, but he would bay at the door and stuff.
I had a lab who was half lab, half plot hound. She had a really deep, beautiful bay that you wanted to hear like a symphony. Patchouli's sounds awful. It sounds like super high pitched. It's like squeaky, and she's the purebred one.
Yeah, she's a banshee.
It's the worst sound. I mean, please don't.
Well, I found a hound lab mix on a pet rescue today. We might apply for her. So
Lily was the best dog I've ever had. Because she had the good characteristics of a lab that kept her rooted.
Yeah.
And really managed her hound characteristics.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I never felt like we had to worry about her running. She could be off leash. Patchouli can never be off leash.
Oh yeah, Flicker was pretty good off leash actually. He was he belonged to someone. He was definitely abandoned. I mean, he just was so well trained and you know.
She was found wandering in the Sahara.
Oh.
And then she spent 2 years in the dog rescue, and then she's been with me for 4, and she has the biggest, most spoiled life in the world now. She gets to the beach all the time. Hard life. You saw that.
Yeah, it's rough. Yeah, I'm hoping I come back as a dog or.
Oh, I always want to come back as that is the next.
Or a bird of prey.
The Mongolians had this belief that dogs were like the step before humans. So they did, when I was living there, somebody shot a movie in which a dog was shot by a dog. They had people who, I don't want to say it, but anyway, dog is shot by a human and it doesn't want to come back as a man. So it's like, has to be born as a man, and it's trying, and so the whole movie is about trying to, make peace with.
That's an interesting movie.
Yeah.
Interesting. And the concept, I think, is really interesting.
I think it's interesting how different cultures value different things and how that might be seen. Whereas most dog people that I know in the United States would argue that dogs are a higher level than humans because of their experience with them.
Oh, gee, those are coming along. Nice. Let's go a few more minutes.
They needed something dark, so I put a little black in.
Nice.
It also doesn't show very well in the photograph, but I put some silver in too to give it a little glitter.
Oh, is it? Yeah, up at the top
like the glitter
there.
It's kind of different places.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the glitter. Right.
Krista, I don't
Well,
want
and
to
the thing is that,
another 5 minutes or so. Oh, yeah.
I am gonna need to go. I have several messages. Oh, that one's looking so good.
Okay.
I have a phone call I actually have to make. I have another meeting, unfortunately, in my life.
All right.
Because would be
Have to end, but keep working and keep sending stuff across the thread as you're working on it. Don't stop because we have to stop class. Just keep going.
right. And
Thanks,
please
you guys.
send it during the week. I'll take a look at it.
Let's
Okay.
be up
Thank you. That was great. That was fun.
Yeah, it was good.
later tonight. Now,
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Good one, everybody. Everybody.
guys, see you soon.
Take care. Have fun.
Bye.
Bye.